peek behind the curtain of the Softly Training Lab with the Softly Performance Podcast. The pinnacle of human performance is out there, and we intend to find it.
All right, listeners, welcome to the next episode of the Softly Performance Podcast. Today, I have another guest with me, Megan Lautz. She's a dietitian, RD, been so for some time now. I want to say 2017. Is that right?
2015. I've been working with first responders since 2017.
Okay, so she's been in the game for quite some time. And I would say, right out of the gate, her company that she is a proprietor of is Rescue RD, where she focuses heavily on the firefighter. So, Megan, thank you so much for your time today and for jumping on. Could you talk a little bit about who you are, what you do?
So I'm Megan Lautz. I'm an award-winning registered dietitian that helps first responders get more energy, more resilience through shift work specific strategies. Now, I know the audience is kind of mixed, military, first responder, but in short, I help people who are tired and cranky and don't want a dang vegetable eat a little more vegetables and eat a little bit better in general. So I've been working with first responders for almost 10 years now. Have jumped into my business full time after being an embedded civilian dietitian for about 9 years. And now also I'm doing a little bit of dabbling in pro sport. So I am the dietitian for the Baltimore Orioles this season.
Okay. So I'm glad that you brought that up because I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
So many of the dietitians that I've brought on, I've worked with in the past, and they've moved on to professional sport after working in a private sector. And then they have the opportunity to work with military here and there. In your experience, you started with first responders, then went to baseball. So could you talk about maybe some of the cultural shifts that you've observed? Because you would be coming at it from a different direction than some of the other dietitians I've had.
How it's going from like first responders to pro sport environment kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like what surprised you, or what has been something maybe that you haven't had to deal with that you are now?
Yeah. So it's kind of, it's similar, but different. You know, it's funny. I kind of just fell into this position. The strength coach messaged me on LinkedIn and was like, do you want to work with the Orioles? And I was like, yeah. Yes.
Isn't it nice to be in a place now, like professionally, you don't have to go looking for it? Yeah, it's nice.
No, it just like, and that's part of like having social media. Like I'm very present on social media, and do I love doing the logistics of that? No, no one does. But, you know, instead of having to beg people for opportunities, they fall in my lap because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it fell in my lap, you know, and especially as, you know, as a practitioner, like you just know you're supposed to cut your teeth, you know, you're going to be miserable and you're going to work these random sports jobs if you maybe eventually get to work with majors. And then for it to fall in my lap was like, what the hell? Nobody told me about this option.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I would say it's been a little bit, I think it's been a little bit difficult. It's been very fun and interesting. Like I feel like I very much understand the nutrition needs but learning the lifestyle of a pro baseball player has been the part that I wish I knew 3 years ago, you know, like yesterday, because I'm very big on lifestyle nutrition. Yes, we have textbook nutrition for performance, cognitive and physical, but if you can't execute the things that you have to do on the day-to-day to get that optimal performance, it's typically due to a lifestyle issue. For first responders, for military, it can be lack of sleep, it can be high stress, it can be lack of access. Whereas with pro baseball players, it's actually the same thing, minus the lack of access, because like they have snacks like coming out of the woodwork. They have, you know, every single supplement for free, just on a counter that they can take whenever they want, the highest quality stuff. They have a chef making all of their meals. Now, whether or not those meals are what they want, it's a whole nother thing. I think that was my biggest eye opener was like, you mean there's just snacks and hydration stuff literally every 20 feet and they still don't take it? Like in my dreams, that if that happened to first responders, they would have no problem taking it. And now I'm like,
So I'm so glad that I asked that. So what you're saying is you're observing maybe a human behavior that's kind of universal, that
correct.
Even though they have the resources, they're still not, I want to say imbibed, but that's usually related to alcohol.
They're still not, they're still not jumping on it. And I think a lot of us always want to say, oh, it's an education issue. I don't think it's an education issue. I think it's when you're working with high-performing people have high expectations for every aspect of their life. They want to be the best parent. They want to be the best first responder. They have a side job. Or if it's a baseball player, they have expectations from coaches, expectations from social media. Like there's so many expectations in so many facets of our lives, from financial And then you have nutrition where it's one of the first things to go, I think a lot of the time. Depends on the individual. But, then you have the really high achievers that are like, go, go, go. And they want to coach the people who are really struggling. And they wonder why the people who are really struggling are struggling. It's because they don't value nutrition the way that some of the top level pure fitness trainers who've always been shredded do, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot easier. Oh, man, it's slipping my mind right now, but it's essentially that, the bucket of crab theory where the crabs at the top are trying to keep the other ones down, or sorry, the ones at the bottom are trying to keep the ones from climbing up. It's kind of similar. Like it's a lot
Yes.
easier, at least in strength coach world. Anybody who says that you need to squat ass to grass, they say that because they can, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah. Anyway, you mentioned that nutrition is the first thing to go. Just to really spoon feed here, you're saying that regardless of who it is that you're speaking to, whether they're a pro athlete or first responder, like this is an observation that you've made. Why is it the first thing to go? Because is it one of those things that, and I don't want to answer the question for myself, but would you, I'll shut up here. Why
That's
is it the
okay.
first thing to go?
Yeah. So I have some theories, right? Like, and I'm very keen to like pattern recognition, right? Like I do a pretty good job with that. And I haven't really dug into this theory yet. So, there may be a mental health provider who could tell you a lot better. But I just think, and I have seen some research to support this. I haven't just delved in it to really connect the dots, if that makes any sense. So if we're spitballing here, when you're really stressed, whether it's because maybe a call didn't go as you wanted to, and it's actually really detrimental, or it's a bunch of calls that didn't go that way, or things are falling apart at home, or for a pitcher, a major league pitcher, they didn't throw as well, even though they just got this major contract and everybody was, excited for them. So those, that leads to changes in how you eat. Either your appetite increases, it decreases substantially, or your food choices change. And I don't know if you've noticed that for yourself. Like if you have a really garbage day, like, do you want to go home and eat a salad? If you say yes, maybe you do.
No.
I don't. If it makes you feel better, I
Donuts,
don't.
carbs. I'm a carb
Right.
monster.
Like ice cream. I'm a big ice cream girl. Or like, and a lot of times I know for me, when I overdo it, which I am currently in a season of overdoing it, right? I just eat whatever's convenient. And it's not always a salad because it's gone bad because I forgot to eat it, a couple days ago. So from a stress, mental health, sleep deprivation standpoint, I think not only do you have physiology fighting against you, maybe mental health fighting against you, but then also education and how you were brought up. It's multifactorial and people want it to just be text. I told you to eat this way, so just do it, when you don't actually peel back all of the layers of what that person is specifically dealing with within their life. And this can be in pro sport, this can be in first responder space or just general population, though I would argue that first responders are fighting against a lot more hurdles than or even the military, than I would say the general population is.
You got the gears turning. I'm just thinking about, so there's this concept in strength and conditioning known as attentional capacity. Are you familiar with it?
If you talk about it, I might not be familiar with that specific.
I think probably you're aware. So
Yeah.
attention is a finite
Resource.
capacity.
Yep.
Resource, yes. So if I'm placed in a chaotic environment, then more of my attention has to be dedicated to these new X factors that probably not before, right? So in practice, for example, practice in any scenario, like a lot of this stuff is accounted for. I'm working with people all the time, but then there's that X factor of when shit really hits the fan in the real world. And that is going to take up attentional capacity. So what I'm hearing here from, at least from a coaching standpoint, is that you only have so much you can deal with. And nutrition is just one more thing from this taking away from attention. And it's just easier to dump it and dedicate your resources to these other things.
That's what I tend to see for sure. Or there are certain hurdles that they didn't see in the textbook or on social media, and they don't know how to adjust it without being, I like to call it supervision, like without being somewhat supervised or coached by a dietitian or coach who's seen this 100 times in 100 different types of people.
Can you bring up an example like that?
Yeah. So for example, fueling before workouts. I have seen before workouts or even going on the mound, right? So pitchers have a tendency to not eat during or leading up to, especially starting pitchers, to the game. And there are some structural things that can happen there in terms of scheduling, but a lot of times it's due to nerves. First responders do the same thing where, they come in at the crack of dawn, 4 a.m. workout because they're worried about not getting it done on shift. And then they do that workout fast. And then both of these populations are like, man, like I just don't have the zip I usually do. The weights feel heavier. It feels like you're running through sludge. Whereas if we just added some simple things, like I'm now known as the applesauce pouch lady. This is what
Yep.
happens when you have a reel go viral about applesauce pouches. And now here we
I'm old enough too. Like there was a phase there for a long time where it was about the PB&J sandwich.
go.
And then I saw your applesauce thing, and just to point it out for the audience, I mean, how many
Yeah.
people have you worked with who are like, "Oh, I can't deal with food in my stomach when I'm trained"? Probably because of, when I say anxiety, I'm actually
Yeah.
referring to adrenaline and what it does to the
All the
body.
above. Yep. Yep. Yep.
But I tell people a lot. Like I'm thinking of a specific individual. I brought him up before, but hey, if you can't have, let's say, fiber is what I'm thinking in my head. But if you can't have anything that's got structure to it, at least try orange juice. But
Yes.
applesauce, especially an applesauce packet, is even, like, in my mind, that's way easier, right?
Right.
You don't have to
And
worry about
then,
keeping it in the
yeah,
container.
totally. And let's rip this real apart because I'm now getting like I had at least 8 people be like, "Why can't I just do an apple?" You can absolutely do an apple.
Hmm.
I'm not
Right.
saying you can't. It's just again, I work with people who the apple, takes a field trip to work like 5 days in a row, and then it gets battered at the bottom of your bag, and then you don't eat it until you're stuck at a gas leak for 3 hours and you have no other option, right? So applesauce pouches, they'll last 6 months or more, and they're portable, they're quick, they're convenient. A lot of people also tolerate liquid a lot better.
Right.
Um, especially like if I can literally do an applesauce pouch like rolling down to a workout, like walking down to the basement to go do a workout. So for a lot of people, it just doesn't bother their stomach. And I've actually gotten some of my first responders off of pre-workout with applesauce pouches. And I'm not saying every single one of them, but the problem is that first responders think that caffeine is going to give them energy, but it is not giving them energy in the sense of what's going to be used as fuel to get their muscles to push. And that's going to be carbs. So when I get first responders to do an applesauce pouch or two prior to a workout, suddenly their workouts feel good again and they're able to push harder, have more consistent workouts. And sometimes it ends up having them kick the pre-workout because they weren't really necessarily using pre-workout because of the performance enhancing benefits. They were so exhausted that this was the only thing that gave them maybe a little bit of a kick in the pants to actually get the workout done. Whereas if they start fueling appropriately, I can get some people off of it. Now, if you are like a pre-workout junkie and you're like, man, you can pry the beta alanine riddled pre-workout from my cold, dead hands, just do the applesauce pouch with your pre-workout and give me a call.
Right.
Like just do
Well,
both.
and then for me, I mean, we live in a day and age where information is infinite, right? So for me, it's not hard to find out what is caffeine actually doing. And if memory serves, it's suppressing ADH, which changes, let's say, cognitive function. It's not fuel. It's manipulating your brain chemistry, which is great, but it's
Makes you
not.
less tired. Yeah, and it can be
Makes you
used
less
as a
tired is a good way to
cognitive.
put it.
Yep, yeah. I speak down a lot. Like you want to make this as simple as possible, and like the caffeine specifically, it is a cognitive tool. Like we know that you could do. I think it's like 3 to 6 milligrams per kilo. I can't remember what it is. I'm blanking on it.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, I know I'm a professional. Someone will bring it up in the comments, and
You
they'll
just look it
say,
up. You just look it up.
right.
That's
Well,
all.
like that's like totally 300 for I'm a bigger dude, so I can do 300 milligrams before a workout. Technically, yes, but it's not just the workout. You are not a athlete necessarily who's just using this for their workout. You are running a 24 plus 48-hour, 12-hour shift. You are shooting guns where we know that caffeine, when you're tired, can make you make bad decisions faster. So you're not, unless you are really a go-getter who can tell me you're truly using this as a performance tool and you're reducing it at other times of the day, then I don't really love that argument. I mean, again, do you? I'm not judging at all. I'm not a judgy person, but in terms of arguing the use of it is a whole other story.
Well, yeah. And so for me, recently, I brought this up in another episode. I went on a plant medicine journey. I did psilocybin and 5-MeO. And as part of the protocol for that, the month leading up to, which I definitely have to shout out to Dr. Kate Pate because we have to have her back on and talk about it further. But anyway, nutritionally speaking, the whole month before, they wanted you to go caffeine free. And normally for me, yeah, I know, but normally for me, that's not a big deal. Normally, like, I don't really have caffeine headaches or anything like that. I limit my consumption to 12 to 24 ounces a day. At least that was prior to having my son. At least that's what the story I
That'll do
always
it.
told myself. Yeah, and I didn't realize like how over time I didn't sleep well, so I'll have a little bit more caffeine. And next thing you know, anyway, the reason I bring this up is because this is just an action item for people who should try it. Get yourself some good decaf, high quality decaf. I do a pour over every day. And the first week I don't like, doing titrate, like where you're just cutting it in half or whatever. I just went
Yeah.
full cold turkey because that's what I've been used to.
Yeah.
I had brain fog the whole week. I was blown away. I didn't realize 4 years, or at least at this stage, 3 years of over caffeination snuck up on me. And anyway, I bring this up because it may be a good idea, good practice that every few weeks you just go straight decaf. And it's a lot easier if the decaf tastes good. Because for me, I just like the ritual of coffee. I don't have to have caffeine, except if I notice that I have brain fog without it, then that's an issue for me.
Totally. And I love that works for you. Respectfully, I would advise against cutting cold turkey. And the reason is
no. That's just me.
That's just you.
Agree.
Totally. We just have to make sure we always give the disclaimer when we start doing weird stuff. Like some people, they want to fast for a whole day. Go for it. I think the evidence advises against it, but we'll have
agreed.
Yeah. So just to reiterate on that. So, because I've dug into this a lot, right? Like first responders, I work with people on a semi-regular basis who are doing a gram of caffeine a day or more. We are trying to keep it under 400 milligrams.
Yep.
So when we start talking in grams, we're getting out there,
Yep.
And part of this can be they have overscheduled themselves, which I totally get because I do on a semi-regular basis. They are working full-time, 24-hour shifts, plus overtime, plus side gigs, plus running kids to sports. They're going. And the only way to be able to survive that schedule is what? Pummel themselves down with a gram of caffeine or more a day. And then if we go, oh, well, let's just cut it out. First of all, the headaches, like one time I had to cut out caffeine for a day because I had to get a special gut test done and I wanted to die. Like, I was like, the migraine, the brain fog, like, it's not just like my brain isn't working as good as it usually is. It is like your brain is just turned off. Like, and we can't afford that in a high performing. But the thing that scares me the most with first responders and cutting caffeine cold turkey is that they actually see a mood shift, which when we're working with a population of significant, like, depression, anxiety, like very high risk for those conditions. Many of them are on medications for these conditions. Sometimes caffeine can be used as an upper to pull themselves out of a low. And my fear is that if you drastically cut your caffeine without really thinking about it, and you do have some of these things, like the feelings start to come, what do first responders hate the most? The F word. Feelings. Sometimes I really want you to work with like a therapist, like a good therapist or dietitian so that we can phase you off of caffeine appropriately. We can reduce your tolerance for sure. And actually we end up getting you more energy in the long term with less side effects. So sorry, I hope that, tangent wasn't ridiculous, but I just wanted to clarify like a stepwise
No, I
approach.
appreciate, 100%. I really appreciate you bringing that up because I would not recommend going cold turkey. It's just, I felt fine doing, like I looked at, not suggesting this, but I looked to it as a challenge.
Well, you weren't doing too high. You were doing 24, if you were doing 24 ounces of coffee a day and it's just coffee and it's not like the, jet fuel triple caffeinated coffee that they managed to get their hands on.
The white monsters.
Yeah, actually, so I've gotten to the sad point in my career where I'm recommending Monsters and Red Bulls because they're half the caffeine of Bang, Celsius, Heat, and Rain.
Yeah,
So
Celsius. That's the other one that's really hot right now.
Yeah, and they'll always say, well, it has the fruit on the front, Megan, so it's healthy for me.
Yeah. Oh man, you're preaching to the choir. Yeah.
I'm tired.
Yeah, I'm very tired.
Yeah. So, like, actually, interestingly enough, if I get someone doing 3 bangs a day and I get them to do 3 white monsters a day, I've cut their caffeine from 900 milligrams to
Wow.
450 milligrams without taking the behavior of drinking a energy drink
Wow.
throughout the day.
Hey, saving a lot of money too.
I do witchcraft
more
on a
money.
pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
Like, they're just these, like, weird little strategies that work. And that's my whole goal is, like, I'm constantly working on finding these, like, weird little hacks, these weird little strategies. It's not biohacking. It's just things that sound so simple but actually work when you're tired and cranky and don't want a vegetable.
So that's awesome. So great example of this. So shout out to Bob Calvin. I don't think he's on social media, but if anybody who knows Bob will understand this story. They probably heard this story. But during combine prep, while I was at Exos, he was known to, well, from a nutritional standpoint, just straight up lie to the athletes. So he would give them 2 or 3 cups of spinach. I'm like, coach, is this, or his nickname was Snacks, is this 1 cup of spinach? He's like, yeah. but it'd be like 3 or 4 regularly because in the grand scheme, like in 8 weeks, like they're not going to, we're trying to keep them as healthy as possible. But anyway, that's an example of like a story or a hack that he would do. What are some examples of maybe some other things that you've done, Dre, so to speak, things that maybe people can do at home or think about?
Yeah, I mean, how do I get the nickname Snacks? Like, I guess maybe I'm probably going to be Sauce by the end of my career, aren't I?
Sauce. Hey, just own it. There's a Sauce Gardner. He's got his own hot sauce. Maybe you come out with your own applesauce.
Yeah, my dream is to have one where I put caffeine in it and then it like cracks like a glow stick and then creatine goes in it.
Okay. We'll talk to Brent. Brent's got the
I've got
supplement
great
company.
ideas. Okay. You want more sauces, more sauce ideas? I got plenty of sauce ideas. Yeah. I mean, I think those are my two big ones actually off the top of my head. I'm sure I have other ones that I'm just like blanking on of like in terms of witchcraft, like the eating before a workout, something super simple, something light on your stomach, something carb based, applesauce pouches, smoothie pouches, fruit cups, and Uncrustable. Those kinds of things about 15 to 30 minutes prior to a workout can dramatically improve energy. And then also, pulling back on caffeine and timing caffeine appropriately. So if you're doing like multiple of the 300 milligram energy drinks per day, we cut it down to something that's 150 to 250 or 200 milligrams of caffeine. So the White Monster or the Celsius is actually a step down from the bangs. And also try to leave about 5 hours before bedtime with no caffeine, because
Okay.
y'all can tell me until you're blue in the face that you can have a cup of coffee and fall asleep, but it's not going to prevent you from falling asleep. It will mess with your sleep cycles. So then you make up the next day feeling more tired, more crappy. What do you reach for more of? Caffeine. So it
Right.
becomes these cycles. So those are my two best cases of witchcraft. I might have some other ideas.
So,
You know what? I do. I have one more witchcraft.
yeah. Go for it.
Picking the right electrolyte product. So picking the right electrolyte product. So a lot of my first responders right now are really scared of added sugar. And sometimes I will have, they're called canteens, rehab units. Basically, if you're at a large alarm, the volunteers bring snacks and Gatorade and other stuff, right? Different areas of the country call it different things. And they want me to make these healthy. Like, Megan, you're the dietitian, come out and make this healthy. And to me, healthy, and you can help me clarify this or not, is a misnomer for when you're in a high intensity situation.
Yeah, it
Because
doesn't matter.
yeah, exactly. It's semantics. Sometimes I think people are like, oh, they're the same. What is healthy when you sit on your ass is potentially not performance enhancing in a high intensity scenario. So healthy is typically low sugar, low sodium, high fiber, high protein. What does not help you in a high intensity scenario is high fiber, high protein, low sodium, low sugar. And let me tell you why. Sugar is a quick form of carbohydrate. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to get to your muscles and to be used for energy, which is why I'm not handing out bowls of quinoa to firefighters running into burning buildings, because it is A, going to slow digestion, which slows fuel getting to the muscle, and B, leads to stomach issues. So if your stomach starts feeling off when you're about to run into a burning building, it's going to impact performance. And then the last thing is sodium in terms of, whether it's healthy or performance enhancing. And so if you're losing a lot of sweat, we're going to have to increase sodium to replace those losses. So in terms of my electrolyte packet witchcraft is, I want you to pick an oral rehydration solution or an ORS product like Drip Drop, Liquid IV, or Fluid Tactical. Pedialyte Sport is another one, but I haven't seen it out like as much as I've seen the other ones. And these products were developed for the cholera epidemic, where they hadn't have access to IV fluids in the quantities necessary to save people. So they developed a product that could be administered orally that is equal to IV fluids in the case of mild to moderate dehydration. Equal to IV fluids in the case of mild to moderate dehydration means no one's starting a line on you, means that you could potentially prevent some dehydration-related musculoskeletal or just general hydration-related injuries, sometimes rhabdo, that kind of stuff that is very prevalent in first responder and military populations. So why do these products work better than, say, an Element, a Fire Salt, or a sugar-free Relight, et cetera, et cetera? It's speed. So you have double the sodium and half the sugar of Gatorade. And the sodium helps rehydrate through passive diffusion. It pulls water from high concentration in the intestine to low concentration in the cell. But if you have glucose available, you get a power-up like Mario, and you get access to the sodium glucose cotransporter, where it requires glucose to bind, kind of like a key, then sodium can bind and water can follow. So they are going to be 2 to 3 times as fast as, say, Gatorade for rehydration specifically. And then also, I haven't seen like some really strong evidence or papers comparing like element and fire salt versus, say, a drip drop, a liquid IV, or a fluid tactical. But I would argue that they are going to be faster because you have an extra entry point on the cell. Doesn't mean those products are bad or that they don't work. But if I'm going to pick one, I want to go with an oral rehydration solution with sugar.
So what I'm hearing is the sugar is important, but sodium more so as far as the ratio of sodium to glucose. Is that fair to say? Because what I'm hearing is drip drop doesn't, because I remember it's like 40 grams of carbs, I think, per serving.
It's only 50. It's probably like, it's somewhere between 10 and 15 grams of sugar and
Okay.
like 600 to 800 milligrams of sodium, depending on which product.
Okay. But that's still significantly more sodium than something like Gatorade.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Now, why is Gatorade? I guess the question is, because I'm thinking of the listener, the firefighter. Like, why is Gatorade not the best option?
It's not the best option. It's a different tool.
Right.
So,
Talk about that. Like, why? So
Yeah.
why would anybody use Gatorade at this point? I guess is the
So-
question.
I'm going to see if my firefighter knowledge is good enough, and then someone can comment and tell me it's not. So a pike pole, right? A pike pole is what you ripped out a ceiling with. Could you probably use it for forcible entry? Maybe, but it's
Right.
probably not going to work that well.
Right. Right.
So different tools for different jobs. So Gatorade is going to replace glycogen. So if somebody is missed their 3 meals and a box drops and they have to go run into a burning building, or they're going to have multiple hours of overhaul, we might actually prefer Gatorade because we want to give them fuel. They're buying energy. They're buying fuel in the next 20 minutes. So
Okay.
that is why anytime we have people in high intensity situations, whether it's a drill, a recruit, somebody training for like some sort of military PT test, that kind of thing, and they're going to last longer than an hour, we want 30 to 60 grams of carbs per hour. The focus is hydration, but the main thing we want is carb replacement, then hydration and sodium. Now, if it's a really hot day, then that ORS product starts to creep in as maybe one of the better options. If they're coming in dehydrated, but they've eaten, then maybe we actually opt for the oral rehydration solution because that is the biggest gap we need to fill right now. The gap, less of fuel replacement, though we do want to play with it. So a lot of times people will ask me, well, I just want one. Whereas like technically in my magical fairy tale world, we'd have Gatorade for glycogen and carb replacement, the ability to push energetically, plus hydration and a little bit of sodium. And then we would also have the oral rehydration solution products to correct dehydration, either while it's happening or right before it's happening, or sometimes even replacement after. Does that help make more sense?
Yes, absolutely. That's fantastic. I didn't even know I had that question until you brought it up. So here's a question. Well, it's kind of related to this other thing that I wrote down. Going back to the pouches, for pre-call, so to speak. How do you feel? You mentioned 6 months shelf life. I'm thinking of the more frugal customer because I think some people, particularly me, I'm thinking of myself, over time you start to do the math and it's like, this is kind of expensive. Is there a more economic way to do this? So I'm wondering what you think about making your own applesauce. Further to extend that, when I'm looking at this electrolyte and carb replacement stuff, I actually make my own, but how realistic is that? And we'll pin this last question. But as far as making my own stuff, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly make your own stuff. I just work with really tired and cranky people who are not going to do that typically, or they're in a season of life where that's just not feasible. I can tell you with a toddler and running a business, I'm not in that phase of life.
It's so hard.
Yeah, like where you actually have to spend some money because to purchase yourself convenience at that point. Now, I have some people who are worried either about mold or like lead or other things in applesauce pouches, or they don't like the environmental cost of more plastic. So some of them will buy silicone pouches, like the silicone pouches, and they will just do their own applesauce that way. But the cost there is then going to be your time and your energy. Some people have it, some people don't. I can tell you right now, in my phase of life, I'm going to buy the pouches.
Right. So convenience is okay. It's okay to pay for that. Especially for me, it's like if your life is on the line, easy. Go for easy.
Go
Not
for
right.
easy. Yep. Go for convenient. And plus also other things people don't think about, both on military and first responder sides. Like when people are bringing snacks to them, parachute, like they're like, why can't we just hand them apples and bananas? Like, I guess it's a dumb question to people who work in it because they
Yeah.
don't know the logistics of the back
Yeah.
end of, perishability. But a lot of times, like canteen rehab units, DFACs, like all these places are going to be looking for how long can this product last because there's a
Hmm.
cost savings there due to the perishability. So a lot of times I like to then bring this directly to my first responder who's not stocking those things, because if they can have a go bag on their assigned unit, this is also same for military, like things like applesauce pouches, smoothie pouches, fruit cups, sometimes even Uncrustables, though those get a little smashed. So that's not always the bestest option.
Just turn it
Um,
into a gel. It's just a gel now.
now it's a gel. Well, they have these little containers now on Amazon that like protect your Uncrustable. It's very, if you're really into them. But what else? Tuna packets, chicken packets, nuts and seeds, dried chickpeas, dried good bean mixes, and you're going to load that go bag with a bunch of snacks. Not one sad protein bar that's going to be mashed at the bottom of your bag and you're only going to eat it when you're ready to chew your arm off. A lot of snacks, because you want to have things that if you get stuck on calls, or maybe you're not in called life anymore and you just are running errands with your kid. And we all know how errands go. They always go 2 hours longer than you thought they would. And you don't bring any snacks and then you roll through the drive through. So same thing. Or kids' soccer practices. You're either eating dinner at 4 p.m. or 9 p.m. and there's no in between. That go bag actually saves you from overdoing dinner or overdoing portions later in the day. And it also spreads your energy out. You don't have
Right.
these energy dips anymore.
Right.
So one of my biggest, I guess, another witchcraft thing is having the go bag stocked with non-perishable options. Of course, you can put in your fresh apple, your fresh banana if you are pretty disciplined and will actually eat them. But I work with a lot of people where like they then get distracted and that thing
Yeah, you
doesn't get
forget about
eaten.
it. Yeah.
Totally.
And then for me, it becomes an exercise in discipline because now I got to eat this black beat up banana
I
at the
won't
bottom
do
of my
it.
bag.
I'm a prima donna. I just
It's
can't. Once it gets too many spots on it, I'm out.
for me, it's like, well, you shouldn't have done that. Now you got to
Yeah,
eat this.
punishment. Yeah, yeah, that's fair. I mean, especially if you're like a frugal person. But yeah, that go bag is really a lifesaver for a lot of people. Sometimes I'll get someone who's like, well, if I have snacks, I'm going to eat all the snacks. You can make it so that it's slightly less convenient. Maybe you don't keep it actually where your seat is. You keep it somewhere else on the rig where the water is, or like in your trunk of a patrol car. Just make it slightly less convenient to just grab a
Okay.
snack because you're bored. But also, you're putting in better quality snacks. Now, I have to go back to the Uncrustables for a second because somebody here is listening and thinking, I'm just going to have 6 Uncrustables for lunch because the dietitian lady told me that
Yep.
Uncrustables are now a health food. That's not what it said. It's actually a tool. So the carb to protein ratio is just impeccable from a sports nutrition perspective for Uncrustables. The Denver Broncos eat like 300 of these suckers per training day. It's like insane. But these
It's
are
pro sport. They're eating ridiculous amount. Yeah.
well, their calorie needs are
Yeah.
incredible. But
Yeah.
so were first responders. So were
Yes.
some of our
Agreed.
military. And
Yeah.
a lot of times they're just like, well, I'm not lean enough. So I must restrict, 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 never eat snacks, never have food. And then they end up going the other direction and binging. The way you fix this is by actually spreading your food throughout the day and using carbs as a tool to boost performance in high intensity scenarios. Um,
It's weird to me, not to hijack, but it's so
yeah,
strange to me. It's 2026. I can't tell you over 12 years how many times I've heard fuel your workout properly, right? Just eating carbs and how carbs are good. But how many times in 12 years I've heard, yeah, I don't have energy. There's a fundamental human issue here where this is not, known 100%. The fact that we're still talking about it today draws pause with me. I don't understand it. It's
well,
strange.
the thing is that people hate facts and science.
Yeah.
They don't like that's a Leslie Nope quote. That is, yeah, the people hate facts and science. So unless you can somehow make it kind of sexy or different or sound interesting or, it's going to be it's a hard sell. You know this. It's to be healthy, eat, drink your water, sleep, don't drink too much alcohol, eat your vegetables, eat your fruit. How many times can you say that until people get just completely glaze over, right?
Yeah. It's noise.
It's
You
noise,
get
and
used
it's
to it.
especially noise
It
in the first
must be a
responder
secret.
population, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's especially noise in the first responder military population. If I was a shredded dude who looked like a bodybuilder, I would be way richer than I am right now because I could just sell all kinds of dumb shit to
Yeah. Jack
to
3D,
oh my god, Jack's.
ephedrine. What was the
Yeah,
hydroxycut? You remember? Oh man, I'm
I
dating
do
myself
remember.
there.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, the jacked is how I make myself sound cool to a millennial audience. The Gen Zs are like, "What is this?"
Yes, I know. Right, right, right. Dating myself there,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
Gen Z, is that like, so there is a question I know is relevant for the audience, especially if they have kids. Like, what is the supplement du jour right now as far as like where are they getting their energy from? Is it Celsius or is it like a powder of some kind? Because I
oh,
don't know.
honey, no, it's sin.
Zen, Zen.
You
Yes.
silly goose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been seeing that a
yeah,
lot.
it's
Can you
the
talk
Zen.
about that? 'Cause why did that not come up
Yeah,
as
you
one
wanna
of the
talk about one population that uses Zen more than first responders in the military is baseball.
baseball? Yeah. Yeah. I'm not
Because it's
surprised.
yeah,
Dip.
especially the younger generation. These are younger, mostly in their 20s. So, they were mostly chewing, like, when we were playing, like, when we would have been playing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, now there's a lot less of that. I'm not stupid. I know for a fact they're going to do things in spite of me in terms of, like, Zen and even energy drinks, right? So, what I wanna say is before I start talking about, like, health and stuff when it comes to the Zens and the vapes and the nicotines is do whatever the hell you want, but if you're going to come and ask me whether this is a negative thing for your health or not, then this is what I would say. Is that a decent disclaimer, would you say? Yeah.
Yeah, I say so.
So nicotine is addictive. It is an addictive chemical. They have to put that disclaimer on everything that has nicotine in it. However, there are a lot of first responders, military, baseball players. They need that edge from a performance standpoint. And it is very hard to weigh the pros and cons from a longevity standpoint, from even an instantaneous standpoint, from a health perspective, and that boost of performance that nicotine can provide. But the problem is getting off of nicotine. We talked about getting off of caffeine, or it's even more brutal.
Right. 100%. Right.
So nicotine, we specifically, I think the where I saw the most concern with nicotine was like sleep, especially proximity to sleep. There's always that weird guy who will like say, I sleep better with 18 milligrams in my lip. Like, well, you're a medical mystery.
Well, for me, it's those guys and the guys who do the nightcap. I brought this up before.
Yeah.
Yes, it'll get you to sleep, but that's like asking Mike Tyson to knock you out.
Yeah.
There's
And
probably
even
better ways.
sometimes there are days where that actually sounds appealing. you know, when you're really razzed up. So yeah, so we see shorter duration of sleep, more frequent wakings, just like less quality of sleep. And then when you start to try and pull yourself off of nicotine, it's crushing fatigue for several days and up to 21 days, so almost a month of just feeling like garbage. So it's one of those things where if I can get some of the younger recruits not to ever do it, that's the ideal. But I'm also want to say I'm a realist. I do get it. Like, it's not good for your health. Sometimes you're just crushed. So I don't want to say go do a bunch of nicotine, but like also if you're already doing it, like I'm not going to pry from your cold dead hands. There's other things we can work on. And then
Right.
if you want to start phasing off of that, let's focus on what you want to get done first, or like what you feel is the easiest thing. Because that's how I get someone to change, or maybe
Right.
eventually eliminate those things is give them
Give them
some
some
quick
wins
wins.
first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Quick wins up front. Applesauce pouches, reduce their caffeine, get some better quality sleep, hydrate appropriately, or fix the problem faster with oral rehydration solutions. And then once they feel like they got some of that under the belt and there's some confidence, maybe we can start reducing or scaling back, going from higher higher dose packets to lower dose packets and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's almost like you want them to be better at the skill of behavior change first
Correct.
it's a very tough competition, so to speak, to
Especially with
battle.
people who would rather just shame themselves into behavior
Yeah,
change and they
right.
don't know how to do it otherwise. And shame, we know based on the evidence, is a horrible way to change your
Hmm.
behavior. It's a
Right,
horrible way to do it. You just end
right.
up back where you started.
Yeah, you want to associate. This is good for everybody listening, and I feel like most of the audience understands this. But it's not meant to be this. Yeah, you used a great word there, shame. When you're process focused, like those emotions kind of come out of it a little more, and it's easier to digest. Forgive the pun, but it's easier to manifest some of these changes when you look at the process first over. Well, I don't want to be this person. That's a lot of heady stuff
Yeah.
there.
You have to
Yeah.
zoom out and do big picture. And a
Right.
lot of times first responders want to be in the weeds.
Mm.
And sometimes we have to pull them out of the weeds a little bit. And sometimes we have to pull them back into the weeds. It just depends. We have to kind of play with it, see what works for each individual.
So talking about weeds, you mentioned this is common with most dietitians, 30 to 60 grams of carbs per hour. I've heard upwards of 80. But in
Mhm.
the endurance sport, and the reason I'm bringing up endurance sport is so many of the lessons here apply there too, as far as having a go bag. When you're running, let's say 50 miles, you don't know chemically what your body's going to crave. So you want to
Mhm.
have a smorgasbord of options, because sometimes it might be something super weird, or let's say out of field. For example, you might have a craving for chicken noodle soup.
Oh, yeah,
So
that would be kind of weird.
yes, but I ran this really big ultra, and broth came in handy, but it was also super cold up there. But that was the thing that we all wanted at that time. So anyway, I bring this up because I want to know more about when you're looking at elite level specifically. You're seeing consumption of upwards of, the last time I checked, I think 140 grams of carbs per hour, which is insane, keeping in mind that these guys are burning an insane amount of calories. From the outside looking in, not being an expert in this field, the way I look at that super high carb intake, it's very much individual. So you're going to intake more than me, more or less than me, it depends. But it also acts as a buffer. So meaning if I can take 100 and everything's on the line, my life is on the line, should I? Or
Yeah, I
should
think,
I go to what the dietitian's saying and somewhere between 30 and 80? Because in my head, it's like, well, if I can tolerate 120, should I be? Because I can personally,
yeah.
but should I?
So the other side of this too is to talk about it from a female perspective is the 30 to 60 grams of carbs per hour was mostly, I believe the research was mostly done in men. So a
Okay.
lot of women cannot actually tolerate 30 to 60 grams. They may be on the lower end, like 20 to 30, which is difficult because they're still burning a high amount. And
Yeah,
we
my wife
never
is
start.
actually, she can't even touch like
Yeah,
60. That's not possible. So
it's
I'm so
not
glad you
possible.
brought that up. Okay.
Yeah. So full disclaimer, I'm not an endurance sport person. Okay. My background's in bodybuilding. If you catch me doing cardio, there's a big problem and you should be running too. And even the people I work with intermittent high intensity sport that might be
Hmm.
done for a long duration. So like even baseball is very similar to first responders. They're either gunning or they're not doing shit. And there's no in between. So that is nice because then we can kind of play with potentially higher amounts of carbs or not have to go as high because they're not running and gunning for
Right.
ultras. God, how long? Eternity.
Yes. Yes.
So, yes, we have. So, whenever I say tolerate, and whenever a dietitian says tolerate, a lot of times in this instance, it's going to mean can your gut handle it without pooping yourself, without your tummy cramping, or without it coming up the other end? That's what we mean. So, we always start on the lower end. So, I had a pitcher who I've been working with. He was pretty much fasted for like an hour to 2 hours before pitching. And just towards the end of like, if he was pitching 7 innings, towards the end, he just didn't
Right.
have the zip.
He's out. Yeah.
Didn't have the zip. And so what we did was we added, I was like, hey, we're going to start with 30 grams of carbs per hour. Ideally, maybe we're going to pull it up 40, 60, see how you do. But we actually started with 2 Gatorades, like at least 2 Gatorades per hour. So as he was going into the game, if he could, he would try and sip on Gatorade. And then when he was coming out during each inning, he would either sip on Gatorade or he would do a honey stinger or the energy chews. And he had an excellent start, I will say. I take full credit for it.
Of
No, I
course.
tease. Yeah, of course. But so that's what we mean. So when I check back in with him, hey, did you try this? Did it help? Yes, I tried it. I felt like I had a lot more to give towards the latter half. Again, this is what I'm saying. You are buying energy in the next 15 to 20 minutes. When you drink Gatorade, when you do carbs, are they healthy? Not if you're sitting on your butt. If you're about to go run into a burning building or pitch in front of thousands of fans, be a good based on minutes. So now the next step for him is he tolerated 30, 40. So now if he can do a little bit more, get up to 3 Gatorades per hour, which these are 12-ounce Gatorades, they're not very big, then we'll see if that either helps his performance or starts to impact his gut. It is a tightrope rear walking. Now, if you
Okay.
can tolerate 140 grams of carbs in an hour, and you're doing ultras, go for it. If you can tolerate 140 grams of carbs in an hour and you're not doing ultras,
Right.
different.
That I do. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's all about
Yeah.
tools.
All
When
right.
we use
This
them.
is great.
Did that make sense?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I think it being a tightrope is
Mhm.
important. And I guess you need it. Well, so here's a question. So that makes sense for a baseball athlete because they know when the game is going to start. They know when practice is going to start. But what about the firefighter? Like the
This
time
is
to
why the go
experiment.
bag is imperative.
Yeah,
This is
okay.
why the go bag's imperative. And I can tell you, applesauce pouches for fire or police is the one thing that if y'all are screaming down the highway, you can real quick,
Yeah, it's
like
not hard.
not
Okay.
hard.
You don't wanna peel a banana on the way. Yeah, sounds weird.
No,
Okay.
you can't. I mean, and a Gatorade or like Gatorade now has these ones called Relight, which is the pre-made like liquid IVs. So that's equal to an ORS. I think packets tend to be more convenient, but if you're in an area where you catch a lot of fire, then maybe some pre-made ones and you try and drink that down if you can. So that's why the go bag is so important for first responders. It's also a habit you have to build. So like that might not be the best option for a rookie who barely got like in the cadence of wearing gear and remembering all their gear and remembering all the things that
Yeah.
they have to do, right? That stress overload. But as you start to get your bearings and you're more comfortable and you've been there a while, that actually might be something that you could just really kick back as you're screaming down the highway to get to where you're going. Is it perfect? No, but always keep in mind, a lot of people, they want to say either I do it perfect or I don't do it at all. Well, then you're losing at least some benefit. It might not be the 100% the best performance, but wouldn't you want 50% more if you could have it? You
Right.
know?
Yeah, it's in my experience working with military first responders, it was very similar with naps.
Yeah.
It's easy, or just sleep in general. It's like, oh, what's the point? Like, I can't. Well, dude, if you took 10 naps this year and you took 0 last year, theoretically speaking, that's a win,
Yep.
right? So I would, and this is good for the listeners. Like, if you're going on TDY somewhere, like you're in a hotel that you normally wouldn't be staying in, that's the time to lower the. For me in Phoenix, we set the house at 70 degrees at night. That can be costly for some people. So I bring that up because the time to like really fucking crank it down is in the hotel. The time to take a nap is on the vacation. And I think sometimes people forget, like, hey, that's still cumulatively across the whole year. That's still good. So,
Right. And I want to mention too, TDY, go bags work for TDY as well. Because a lot of
right.
times when people go TDY, it's like, I'm in South Africa, not South Africa, like some random place in Africa that like doesn't have Amazon anymore. So all of the non-perishable things usually work well in your suitcase. Your jerkies, your That's It bars. I don't know if you've ever seen dried fruit, like the That's It bars that are just dried fruit mashed into a bar.
Yeah,
Regular
sure.
dried fruit. Yep. Those protein bars. So a lot of times protein tends to be a challenge when people go TDY or they get like food poisoning from a certain type of protein TDY and then they're like, oh, for good love of God, I'm not doing that again. So yeah, bring your own jerky, some protein bars that you like. Protein bars like Quest bars, Bear Bells, those are actually pretty good. Like pick ones that you don't hate. You can be cheap and spend 30 cents less at Costco and get one that tastes horrific, or you
Right.
could spend a couple of cents more to actually enjoy it, especially when you're traveling. I always buy the nice protein bars for when I'm traveling because then I get a little treat and I
Well,
save
yeah,
money.
yeah, same here. Yeah. When I was working for my old company, if I was going to go teach, I would stock the fridge, depending on where I was staying, with kombucha and dark chocolate, and that was my thing. Like, although the dark chocolate, I started noticing caffeine content was messing with my sleep. But regardless, because I'm coming down from
Yep.
teaching all day.
Yep. Yeah, that's hard to
But
come down
yeah,
from.
I think perhaps people could be more strategic instead of looking at it as a let's say obligation, as an opportunity rather, depending on where
Yes.
they're at. I think if they're in the shit somewhere, obviously that's just going to be challenges there. But what else comes to mind as far as, I mean, this has been awesome. I really thank you for your time so far. But what else comes to mind? We talked about Zen, we talked about caffeine, we talked about behavior change through structure design or environmental design. What are some other things that come to mind?
Yeah, I think in terms of maximizing energetics, fasting has been really popular lately. I feel
Hmm.
like we're kind of coming off of the big wave that intermittent fasting was in like 2015, 2017.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
But some people still do it accidentally. And what I
Yes.
mean, yeah, in terms of like a first responder, they come to work and then they do lineup and then they check out the engine and then they're drilling the rookie, then they're doing a workout and then they're doing all these things and then they didn't eat at all or they just had like one little protein bar as they were leaving the house. And then they're wondering why they're eating 3 plates of dinner and their energy was trash throughout the day. And
Yes.
I say this because I'm a professional who's seen it 400 times, but I get it. Like I'm the same way. Sometimes if I'm at home and I have my daughter, like I will like look at my watch and it's like 2 o'clock and I'm like, Eat." So, sometimes you have to be really strategic and like actually plan to eat and have something there convenient and ready to go. Convenience is going to be the name of the game, especially when you are forgetting to eat or just distracted and calls get in the way, that kind of thing. So overnight oats are usually a great thing. It takes next to no time to make them. Add some protein powder. You get the fiber and the protein. Easy, quick, portable. A good recovery meal that's super portable. is just like literally a protein shake and a fig bar, protein shake and an Uncrustable, a protein bar and a piece of fruit. Like, is it the perfect thing? Like, is it a turkey sandwich or a burrito bowl or some tacos? No, but it can be something good in a pinch if you know you're going to get stuck on calls. So what I'm trying to do is, instead of eating 2,500 calories for dinner and maybe 1,000 calories a little bit more earlier in the day, I'm trying to get people to spread it out so that they feel like they have more energy. They can push a little bit harder cognitively and physically when they have an active job. And it also reduces portions later in the day. One thing I do want to add to that is, a lot of first responders will say like, oh, like they're struggling to lose weight, so they just need to stop snacking and stop eating, and then it rebounds later in the day. Or they cut their calories too low because they're accommodating for activity like they are a 9 to 5er. And
Right.
what I mean
Okay.
by that is, and sometimes this happens in the military too, if you're at a decently busy station in the DMV, where I'm from and where I've mostly worked as an embedded civilian, they're getting 10, 15, 20,000 steps without thinking about it during the day.
Right. Right.
That's a ton of activity. As someone who now sits on her butt and now just does podcasts in her office periodically, I have to go on a 1 to 2 hour walk with my husband to maybe even break 10,000. So that when you're putting in My Fitness Pal, I work out 3 to 4 times a week, weight training or a purpose for walking, but you're not accommodating for your shift days where you're actually getting another hour of activity or more. You need more calories than you think, and they need to be spread throughout the day, even if your goal is weight loss. And that spiraled
Right.
into a tangent, but did that make sense?
100%. Yeah. What I'm hearing is something I've touted many times. It's just awareness. You have to
It's
be
hard to
aware.
be aware. Sometimes you need to pay someone to be aware. Sometimes you need to work with a coach to become aware that these are things that you're doing because you haven't sat down to think about it as a high achiever.
Yes, right. You're focused on just doing the job. You have my gears turning a lot. You mentioned the protein, or the smoothie, I should say. What are your thoughts on? Well, there's one subject I'm thinking about, but I'm not sure if we should bring it up, but because it's a whole nother thing. But Rockin' Protein and the Fairlife Protein, the ultra filtered milk. What are your thoughts on that stuff?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, ultra filtered milk is just they pull out water to make milk more milky. And that means there's more protein, but also
Tastes
more
great.
calcium, more magnesium. They taste pretty good. One thing everybody on the internet's having a meltdown is like the microplastic. The minimal amount of microplastics that you are getting from a Fairlife. Like, you are missing the forest for the trees here, people. Like, and if that's your thing, you're kind of a crunchy granola person, you're from California, it's your vibe, then go ahead, but don't knock someone who just switched from a donut to a Fairlife for
Right,
drinking the
100%.
Fairlife.
Yes,
you know?
100%. Yeah. Take the wins where you can.
Right.
What was I going to say about that? Flipping my mind. Can't remember. Okay. Well, what else comes to mind? We covered a lot. Yeah. Yeah. It was awesome.
Sound bites, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts,
Yeah.
things?
What, outside of what we've talked about so far, this is a question I always like to chew on, so to speak. What is frustrating you outside of, like, because you mentioned, let's say, anti-intellectualism or anti-evidence based, like methylene blue and ivermectin is probably the things we should be doing. Maybe just focus on sleep. So,
Yeah, the
what are
peptides
some
is a
things?
whole nother tangent. But no,
Peptides.
please
Yes.
don't make me go on this tangent. They're just going to yell at me more, even though I know I'm right.
No, it's just something that keeps coming up with every dietitian that I've had, is this, because I know you guys are getting these questions like, what about peptides?
Right. And they don't want to
And
hear it from the dietitian. They don't want to
what do
hear
you
it. They
mean?
ask the dietitian,
But you
but they
mean they don't
don't
want to
want to
hear
hear.
that? Don't
Yeah, they're
do
like,
it.
well,
Yeah.
like they ask the dietitian, and then they're like, well, you're not an orthopedic surgeon or like a athletic trainer or whatever, so we don't want to hear it from you. But like, we're talking about it because of the oral peptides, which leads to the injectables. So like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
assuming you're talking about BP157, tesamorelin,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
TB500. The GLP-1s are a different story. They are, approved. Basically, like, if you're avoiding seed oils because you think they're unhealthy for you, but there's robust human randomized control trials and observational studies that show that seed oils are improving cardiovascular health, but then you're spending money to inject um, a product that does not have longstanding human randomized controlled trials at this point in time, then you probably are missing the mark substantially in terms of general health. I'm not going to say they don't feel like they work, like they don't feel like they're reducing inflammation, that you don't have more energy. Right now, we don't know if that's placebo. And we also don't know if that could potentially lead to cancer, like
Yeah.
super growing
Well,
cancer.
if
Not
you
saying it
told
could,
like
but it
right,
could
but we
lead
don't
to.
know. Yeah, we
We
don't
don't
know.
know. Yeah. And
It could be, and it's we're not going to know for at least what
a
6 to
long
8
time,
years minimum. Yeah, minimum, and
minimum.
6 is like super fast.
Yeah. Super fast, but it not during. And I just want to clarify, I am an evidence-based practitioner who wants the best for my first responders and gets paid $0 to talk about certain things. Well, sometimes I get paid for like drip drop or something, but a product
Right,
I stand behind. And if the evidence comes out that this is a safe product that helps first responders, I will send you to go get that done. No
right, yeah,
problemo. Like
right,
testosterone, TRT. If you need it, I'm a big fan of it. If you are finding an online clinic when you're 24 years old because somebody told you should be on TRT and the blood work doesn't show it, I'm not going to tell you that's a healthy thing to do. It's just, it's difficult being a health practitioner with these things right in this day and age, because a lot of times people think that we're getting some sort of kickback, but who is actually getting your money when you are taking these injectables? The country that you're buying the injection from.
right, right.
So
Well,
anyway,
and then there's the
see.
notion of I don't know the proper name for this. I'm not sure there is one, but let's say consequence of the behaviors that you're exposing yourself to in your 20s, and when they rear their ugly heads in your 40s.
Potentially, or fertility is sometimes an issue if you
Yeah,
don't do it correctly. So that can
the
lead to problems.
epigenetic consequence of injecting yourself with these things, we don't know.
Right.
And I just want to, I
As a
know most
Band-Aid solution.
right, and most of the audience understands this now because you're the 5th dietitian we've had on, and the
We all
5th
say the same
dietitian
thing.
that yes, yes, it's that adage, if you meet 20 people and they're all jerks, you're the jerk. Well, if you got 5 highly qualified practitioners saying, "Hey, pump the brakes on this, maybe perhaps we should listen." It's almost
Yeah.
like I think of it as a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
It sounds
You're
good
robbing
on the
Peter to pay the
surface.
Powell. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but we don't know.
But at the end of the day, your body, your choice. If you want to go do
Yeah.
those injectables, that's perfectly fine. But if you're going to ask a health professional, we're going to give you the evidence-based, not just evidence-based, but also lifestyle-based recommendation.
Yeah, and then to me, there's also the notion of like, hey, let's be patient. Let's see where it goes first. There's nothing wrong with in my head. There's not. What's the rush? No. When I'm saying what's the rush, I mean you were doing okay, or I should say you were surviving prior to. Let's just wait a little longer. Let the science shake itself out. Like when I first started hearing about this stuff, the fact that I could only find one study, and it was on
No.
rats. It was on rats. That was like, I've
Yeah.
I've
And
never
then, like,
seen
I
that
think
before.
tesamorelin or semamorelin, like, they have something on reducing visceral adiposity or, like, belly fat in HIV patients. But just because that is something that can happen with people with HIV doesn't mean it's going to work for
Hmm.
you as a first responder without
Hmm.
HIV.
Yeah,
So,
and they have to recognize that they're a special population. They're doing some stuff that most people would never. So we have to respect
yeah,
that. Like
and they're in
they're
pain.
unique in that
So
way.
that's why
Yeah.
I say, like, if you want to go do this, go do this. I'm not professionally recommending it, but I understand why we're here. You've got a back, shoulder, neck, and knee injury that is crushing your ability to have a good workout, to play with your kids, to do the stuff that you want to do, and you will do anything to feel better. But there could be consequences to doing anything to feel better.
Right. It's fascinating. Humans
Yeah.
are weird.
Yeah.
So, question to wrap things up. Where can people find you? What services do you offer?
Yeah, so I primarily do mostly public speaking now. So I work with fire, police, sometimes even military agencies, departments, and I come out and do workshops, whether they're an hour to up to 6 hours long, whether it's nutrition, or I sometimes bring some friends out and we will do nutrition, fitness, like general wellness. I also speak at conferences. I don't do as much one-on-one coaching anymore because it is self-pay and some people don't want to do self-pay, but I do have that as an option. And you can find all of this stuff on rescuerd.com, in addition to a free recipe book for fire station dinners and meal prep.
Great. And then you're on socials, Instagram. Are you on any other channels?
Yep, at rescue.rd on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.
I got to get on TikTok and Facebook. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Megan, thank you so much. Any last words? The
Yeah.
one message that you want the military first responder community to know before we end the recording here.
I mean, I didn't come up with it, but progress over perfection every day, right? Like if you
Yeah.
can do one little step, even if it feels stupid, it doesn't feel super masculine or super like high octane, ripping the wall down kind of thing. And it gets you in the right direction. Like that's what we're looking for. These small little baby steps so that maybe in a year you look back and it actually made a big difference in your energy, body composition, overall life.
Okay, I love that. Yes, agreed here. Process focused approach. One last question that just popped into my head. I haven't asked
Yeah,
anybody this question.
boy.
Books or readings that you would recommend? Maybe, I mean, even I'm sure you have a blog or something like it, but anything's come to mind as far as resources for people outside of your own stuff?
So the sad part is like I'm no longer reading like health books, I'm reading mostly business books because now I'm trying to build and scale this into Rescue RD into like an agency of dietitians that specialize in first responders.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, because it's a really, I mean, you've probably found some really great dietitians, but there's like a lack of dietitians who understand the first responder community right now.
I don't
So
disagree with that. No, I agree 100%.
yeah, military's got a little bit more, but still. So I think the gap and the gain is one that I've read that has helped not only from a business perspective but an overall life perspective. So that could be a good one. I can't remember who the author. Ben Hardy. Ben Hardy
Okay.
has a lot of really good books for like really clarifying what is your goal and what you're willing to do to get that goal and to make bigger goals in order to see better progress instead of just being like, oh, I'll just try and double it next year or that.
Yes. Okay. Great. Well, we're going to end the recording there. Thank you so much again, Megan. Very much looking forward to seeing what the community has as a response. And I hope we can have you on again soon. All right.
Sounds good.
For the
Thanks for
rest of
having
you,
me.
yeah. For the rest of you, you guys have a great day. Die living.